page is $2.3 million.
That's
Cast in
right.
place 2.4.
Yeah, 2.384. That does not include the chain link fence.
No, that is not.
So, okay, so if we're gonna have an open culvert, we're gonna need a chain link fence.
Well, actually, we're gonna need more than a chain link fence. We have a chain link fence out there now, but once this is redone, we'd be recommending a traffic barrier, so that, vehicles do not go into the channel. So, we would be recommending something more than just a chain link fence.
Okay,
So, but that would be for all of them.
That'll be us.
Oh,
Right.
so I think this is a big deal. I think it's a big deal for the town. I think it's a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot of money. And what we decide is gonna have a big impact on us for a long time. And two, we're gonna seriously disrupt traffic on Marsh Road. We're gonna, and if we do, I prefer to find a solution where we just disrupt traffic once rather than twice, but it doesn't look to me like we're realistically in a position to do that right now, because I don't think any of us are gonna support building a path to nowhere. So at least I think what we need to do is be able to get the numbers really clear. And it looks like the two options are the open channel versus a box culvert. We gotta know exactly what the costs are gonna be in an apples to apples comparison. And it's not clear to me that we have that. If I'm piecing it together now, I'm seeing that the open cast in place culvert would cost $2.384 million plus the cost of the traffic barrier, which would cost somewhere between $160,000 and $590,000. That's on one side. On the others, and we don't have to do an allowance for an EIR report there. If we decide to cover that at some point in the future, we're gonna have a cost of $1 million plus an EIR report. On the other hand, the box culvert's gonna cost us $2,859,000 plus the cost of an EIR, which looks, according to your estimate, like $400,000. Okay, well, this is what the staff is telling us.
Not at all sure about that.
Well, you're not sure about it, but it's what the staff is telling us. So if I understand what the staff is telling us, you're telling us that you would expect that to cost approximately $3.259 million. So all I'm saying is we need an apples to apples comparison here.
Yeah, that's the cost of the barrier.
But everybody has.
If you cover it, you have an EIR report as well.
Well, we don't have to.
In the future, that's absolutely right. So that's
So-
why I say it's more than $1 million to cover it, it's maybe $1.5 million to cover it.
That's why you really need, as you say, those numbers.
Yeah.
Because it's future money
So-
versus present.
So let's bring it back. So you're not making a decision basically between either one of these until you get further information. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Can staff
We may be
provide
able to
that
get-
this evening?
That's true, maybe we can get it now.
You got 2.3, 2.8, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Correct, those are the costs of the two options, 2.3, 2.8. The chain link fencing, whatever's gonna go along the side of the barrier, that's gonna be there for any option, so those costs are,
Well, is it gonna be there for a box culvert?
Yes.
That's,
Not gonna be there
Yes.
for a vote.
or if you put a
Yeah,
pedestrian.
yes.
Yeah, it will be.
Yes.
Well, and I think even if there weren't a pedestrian, you would still want a traffic barrier, because right now, if cars hit the fence, they're gonna go into the channel. When you have a box culvert, if cars hit the fence, they're not gonna go into the channel, they could go over the box and into someone's backyard. So in either case, our recommendation would be to provide a traffic barrier to prevent cars from either going into a open channel or to prevent cars from going into somebody's backyard.
Right.
So taking those out of the equation, the environmental process for the 2.3 million is how much? With no
The
cover.
first, the open,
Oh,
nothing, like,
Cast in place,
They say
open,
zero.
2A.
We're guessing, but it could be as little as zero, it could be as much as $50,000 if they had to do a negative deck.
Correct.
It's in that range.
The environmental cost of the box culvert.
That's a full-blown EIR, and that's with the $400,000.
But we're not sure.
That's an estimate.
And
But how we
commenting
should-
on Mr. Whitmer's comment that I made about the extending the boardwalk and the bike path along Watkins over the channel, if we did that in a coordinated effort, we could create this, what they call a PCA, a planned conservation area for the bike ped installation, and go and get grant money for that, which would then help pay for the new bike route along Watkins, or if we're going to open up the channel along Watkins at all to a more riparian environment for watershed and flow, that could also be paid for. I have to tell you, there is money out there for this exact type of project, and to try to piecemeal it is, I think, the wrong approach.
Okay, so I'll make some comments and thank you. I've been pretty open, and I'm gonna be a little bit more open, and thank you to staff for identifying a few things that do raise some concerns to me. I don't know what's gonna happen on Watkins. I don't know, all I'm focusing on right now is this channel area and the concerns that it's a cost factor, but as we go into this unincorporated zone in San Mateo County, you're right, we have some lane issues. This area may never be an area to where a bike path is going to be safe unless we have probably years worth of dealing with the county on how we transition off of, if this was a covered culvert, into the county area. I mean, we're not gonna drop people off the edge of a cliff into an unsafe area. It just would not be prudent as a town or period. We may change our thought pattern once it's in our city and we own both ends and we can control both sides. But we really have no control of the eastern section once it goes off into the county. And we may never be able to get in an agreement with the county. And as far as I'm concerned, at this point, I favor doing the open culvert. And, if this does come up and we have it to where 10 years from now, this can be dealt with in a manner that the county says, well, oh gosh, we're gonna go ahead and extend it, then I'm willing to say, at this point personally, that it may never happen. But I won't wanna cover a culvert and put people into an area that in fact it's dangerous. I'd rather work with lower numbers today than try to cover, or think that we're going to be covering it in the near future. And frankly, it may take 20 years to have it done at this rate. So, Rick, you're a deciding factor on direction here, or we can call for a vote and see how everybody is sitting.
Let me just try to push on the numbers one more time.
Please.
I understand, Mike, that what you said in response to my last comment was we're actually gonna need the traffic barrier, whether it's a box culvert or an open culvert. So that doesn't really factor in doing the comparison. So at this point, the comparison is really between $2.4 million for the open culvert and what you're estimating to be $3.3 million for the box culvert. That includes your assumed cost of the EIR. And so the way I weigh it, based on that, is we actually, to do the box culvert would cost us approximately $900,000 more now than the open culvert. And if we chose to cover the open culvert at some point, it's gonna cost us an additional at least $500,000 when we do that, as well as additional traffic disruption.
About $1 million.
Probably
He said $1 million to $2 million. Last time it was $1 million to $2 million.
It's gonna be about $1 million more, because remember, if we ever cover the culvert, we're still gonna have to do that same $400,000.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So it ends up close to $1 million.
But we're gonna have to do the 400,000 now.
Not necessarily. If you don't do the box culvert, you don't do the 400.
No, I agree
Right,
with that.
but that goes back to.
In the last meeting, Bill, it said 1 million to 2 million. There were two numbers in there. One was 1 million, one was 2 million, so it's between 1 million and 2 million, is what was in the report.
I think we're pretty naive to hang our hats on generalized estimates for future dollars at, 1 million to 2 million, cost overruns and stuff. I mean, I just think that we have to deal with what we're looking at now and
And maybe I could kind
Please.
of provide some additional comments. The basic question for the council is, at some point, you want to do something with a bike path there. You don't know whether it's now, you don't know whether it's 5 years, you don't know whether it's 10 years, you don't know which communities are going to contribute to it, you don't know if it's going to be a path to nowhere, but you don't want to do that, you don't know whether Menlo Park's going to participate financially, you don't know whether you're going to get grants, so those are all unknowns. So you kind of got to deal to Vice Mayor DeGoya's point of what you know now and deal with the future at some point.
And I would, if I can, I would add, I think the issue of a box culvert doesn't create a bike path. I mean, the box culvert is just an option right now where we've got a covered channel. If we choose to do a bike path, we're gonna go in there and do a bike path on top of a box culvert. So,
there's traffic.
we're not avoiding potential money from ABAG or any other source
Right.
by choosing to box it now. But we are choosing to bear a cost of, based on the staffed estimate, about $900,000 more than doing an open channel now.
Right. You may never cover it in the future, but that's a decision for the council.
You've also got to make a bike path.
If you cover it, you're gonna bear some additional cost. You're gonna, I mean, the way
Right.
based on the numbers I'm looking at, I think it's gonna cost us about $500,000 extra to cover it later than to cover it now. But we're not gonna have to spend an extra $1 million now to do the box. That's what it looks like to me.
Okay. So let's see if we, go ahead,
No, I'd just like to make a motion.
make the motion.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the selection of a concrete cast-in-place open culvert, option 2A, to repair the Marsh Road Wall segment of the Atherton Channel and incorporate design elements to accommodate a future bike pedestrian path. I don't know exactly what that means, to incorporate design elements.
Well, what that means is that the open channel will be designed so that we can put a cap on it in the future.
Easily.
All right, and to authorize staff to perform the environmental assessment of 2A, authorize staff to negotiate an agreement for design with Big Cardosa to be brought to City Council for approval, and to select a preferred concept for a bike. I think that without item number 4, I'm gonna defer on that. So I'm looking at the agenda, the front page of the agenda.
Thank you.
So it's items number 1, 2, and 3. I'll make a motion to do that and direct staff to begin the negotiations with Big Cardosa.
And I will second that.
So I wonder if you would accept an amendment, which is if in the course of doing this review that you need to do for this, it turns out that you're gonna need to actually perform the mitigated negative declaration because you're gonna have to remove heritage trees, that it come back to council.
I can accept that. Yes.
Okay. So,
Discussion?
any discussion? No discussion? So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
The motion passes 3-2. Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience for bearing with us. Moving on to item number 18, consideration for traffic control devices and lane control project along El Camino Real, Selby Lane, Isabella area. Staff would be Mike Kerswager.
Yes, Mayor Weiss, members of the City Council. Staff is seeking City Council direction regarding the potential placement of traffic control devices at Selby Lane and El Camino Real, along with direction regarding the support for reducing the number of lanes of El Camino Real within the town of Atherton from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. El Camino Real is a state highway and a major north-south transportation corridor serving San Francisco Bay Area. Through the town of Atherton, El Camino Real is a 6-lane divided arterial roadway with an average daily traffic volume of approximately 31,000 vehicles per day. Over the past year, staff has been engaged in discussions with Caltrans regarding ideas to improve both vehicular and pedestrian safety along this corridor. In November 2012, Caltrans made a presentation to City Council identifying the intersection of Selby Lane and El Camino Real as meeting warrants for a traffic signal. Since one leg of the intersection is within the town of Atherton, the town would be responsible for 25% of the cost of the signal. And at that time, Caltrans estimated the total cost to be approximately $800,000, so the cost to the town of Atherton would be $200,000. Staff has also focused discussions with Caltrans regarding pedestrian improvements at existing crosswalks at uncontrolled intersections throughout the town. These discussions resulted in the agreement to allow the use of hybrid pedestrian beacons along El Camino Real. And as a result of these discussions, Caltrans has also included the construction of 2 pedestrian beacons as part of a larger Caltrans crosswalk enhancement project, which they are currently programmed for San Mateo and Solano County. This project includes hybrid pedestrian beacons at Selby and Isabella. These improvements will be fully funded by Caltrans, and construction is scheduled to begin in late 2016, so approximately 3 years from now. Since Caltrans has identified 2 potential traffic control devices at Selby Lane and El Camino Real, and those 2 are either a traffic signal or a hybrid pedestrian beacon, staff is seeking direction from City Council regarding your preferred device. As stated in our staff report, during the 10-year period from 2002 to 2011, a total of 50 accidents were reported at the Selby El Camino Real intersection. All were vehicle related. There were no reported pedestrian accidents. Approximately half of the reported accidents involved vehicles being broadsided. And accordingly, due to the number and severity of vehicular accidents, from an engineering standpoint, staff would recommend the installation of a traffic signal at this location. Although a traffic signal is our recommended solution to improve overall safety of the intersection, this may not be a popular solution for residents on Selby and adjacent streets due to the possibility of increased traffic on their streets as a result of this signal. Accordingly, if the council elects to move forward with either traffic control devices, staff would start a public outreach activities with the affected neighborhoods to have meetings to discuss and to educate about these devices. And finally, in addition to direction related to the intersection of Selby and El Camino, staff is also seeking council feedback and direction regarding the reduction of the number of travel lanes on El Camino within the town from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. That concludes staff report, and also wanted to note that KDM, who is with the Office of Traffic Operations with Caltrans District 4, is here this evening if the council has any questions of Caltrans.
Thank you. Any questions of staff, council?
So, I'm a little confused, but I'm sure you can clear that up. So at one time, we were looking at the traffic light, and our quarter share of it was $200,000. I understood that if there was a decision to go with a hybrid beacon, that would not be to our cost. Is that correct?
I believe, Mike, you can elucidate that, but the hybrid beacons at Isabella and Selby are considered part of Caltrans's larger picture at their cost.
Right, okay.
Aren't there 5 locations?
Well, there's 5 locations where we have crosswalks at uncontrolled intersections. But as part of their overall pedestrian safety enhancement project, Caltrans has identified Isabella and Selby as good locations for the hybrid pedestrian beacon.
And not Alejandro?
Not Alejandro, but the city has also, as part of your capital improvement program, we have budgeted money for a hybrid pedestrian beacon. And so Alejandra is the intersection which we've identified as the recommended location for the city funded. Beacon.
So then, and then there was at one time, I guess the county had indicated that they were not gonna participate, and then when I met with Supervisor Slocum, he says, hey, I'd like to talk to you about your interest in participating with us about putting a light here. So did we ever get back with somebody in the county and kind of clear that up as to, is the supervisor not, was he misinformed or whatever?
Or Mike or Katie can probably address
Yes,
that one.
Katie can, well, Caltrans actually solicited that through the county. They actually got a letter from the county basically saying that, yes, the county supports the signal at that location, but is not willing to contribute financially.
That was different than what the supervisor told me, so I think, did anybody get back with the supervisor as I requested to make sure that he understood that and he could decide whether or not he wanted to bring that up?
No, I haven't called him yet, no.
Okay, so I would think that we would want to go do that depending on how we go, because if these guys want to participate, because he's saying his residents want the light.
What would happen if the county does not financially participate?
I'm not sure, I'd have to defer to Caltrans.
Caltrans, please.
Do I have to go up there or should I just stay here?
Yeah,
No.
come up here.
Yeah.
Who's that? Mark.
Thanks.
That arm's over there.
Just sit on my-
Come on up here. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
What happens if the county doesn't participate financially?
Well, if the county does not participate financially, we also have to consider what is the town's willingness to contribute funding the signal installation.
Right.
If any of the agencies that is involved in this intersection do not participate in the funding, we will have to consult with our program advisor and headquarters, and also our district director, to see if we can fund this project 100% because it's safety related.
Right.
Okay, all right, and if they don't participate and somebody else has to pick it up, do you have it so that their side always blinks red all the time?
I don't think we're allowed to do that.
There you go.
I would think that that'd be a solution.
Seems fair.
So, Mike, you'd indicated, I guess, surveying the community. Has there been any outreach with the community with regards to light or hybrid beacon? I've heard conflicting information.
We notified, and as evidenced by the community here this evening, we've notified them about this issue, and the Transportation Committee heard the issue, and so they may be here this evening to comment one way or the other.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you. Councilman Dobby, please.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, if we put a traffic light at Selby Lane, is it gonna be synchronized with the traffic light at Fifth Avenue?
Yes, it will be.
What?
It will be
It
synchronized.
will be,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Lewis.
Has there, I know I asked Mike Kashwagi this the other night, and he said to bring it up tonight. We had talked earlier in the year with Caltrans about the possibility of reducing the number of lanes that come through Atherton from the 6-lane thoroughfare down to 4 lanes, and using the outside 3rd lane on either side as a designated bike and pedestrian path, a safe route to walk, a safe bike path to bike, because right now there's no safe place for anybody to walk. There's a little white line and a little shoulder, but that's clearly, I mean, Catherine said, well, that's not a bike or pedestrian path, that just shows the edge of the road. And so, and I think when we met earlier in the year, Caltrans was very receptive to that and said that, yes, we would be able to do that, they would look into that. If that were done, would it reduce the hazardous intersection in any way such that a traffic signal would not be necessary there?
Well, first of all, I would like to point out to council, if you're not aware of that already, that there is an existing MOU between Caltrans and CCAC that prohibit reducing number of through lanes on El Camino Real in San Mateo County. And then also, El Camino Real is identified as the smart corridor, just in case of any emergencies happen on Highway 101, that it needs to be shut down, El Camino Real becomes the backup route. So that's the reason they have an MOU to prohibit eliminating any through lanes on El Camino Real. And I think if any proposal comes along, it has to be brought to the attention to Caltrans and CCAT early on to, and then also a complete study about operational impact and rather there's gonna be enough capacity, those needs to be studied. But that is not normally, that's not handled by my office.
I see.
I just know that this exists and that's the policy.
But you understand that, once we get into, Menlo Park, it goes down to 4 lanes. And because they have parking along their retail, district. And that was not brought up to us by the other Caltrans.
Right,
Officers.
when we spoke with Caltrans, you know, what I recall is that, they were open to the idea, but there's a process. And part of that process is, you know, Caltrans would need to review it from an operational standpoint. You know, intuitively, as I think you're suggesting, does it really make sense if there's 2 lanes, if there's 4 lanes on both sides of us, why is it 6 lanes here in Atherton? But there is a process to go through. And then, as part of that process, as Katie indicated, because of this existing MOU,
Which I don't know about. Did you know about it?
No, we just found,
Just right now?
Just now.
No.
no, not just now.
yeah, there's, so as part of that process, you know, CK would be part of that process from a decision standpoint, as far as, you know, approving any reduction of lanes.
I've brought it up at CK meetings and nobody said anything to me about it, you know, from the director on down to other people on the board. But
So I'll bring it back, I'm sorry,
that's okay.
to another question. Rick, you have a question?
Well, I just want to emphasize what Elizabeth asked, which I think is a really good point, which is if the traffic lanes were reduced from 3 to 2 on each side, would that in any way impact the safety concern at Selby Lane?
It depends on, I mean, of course, I cannot project what traffic accidents would be. But then it really depends on if you remove 2 lanes, one each direction on El Camino Real at any intersection, and then you use it to, you convert it into a bike lane or a pedestrian path, you add another element to this intersection. That's another point of conflict, that you have bikes, you have pedestrian going the same, I mean, it's more control, but then you encourage the use.
But we've got it
So-
already now.
Well,
And
I
it's
understand,
dangerous.
but I'm just saying that it changed the characteristic of this intersection. It may or may not reduce the number of accidents. I will not be able to tell. We would have to, you know, based on the reported accidents that we get from our database, so.
But from an intuitive standpoint, again, the reason for the accidents, it's I think primarily people turning left. Either people turning left from El Camino onto Selby, or people trying to get out of Selby, turning left onto El Camino Real. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons for these accidents is because the amount of traffic on El Camino Real, and the fact that there isn't enough gaps, and at a certain point, people get impatient. And also, when you take a look at the type of accidents, the cars being broadsided, which is a concern, because those are the most, from an injury standpoint, you know, it's the highest from an injury standpoint. So by reducing a lane, I think that it could help from the standpoint of now, if you're that person turning left, now you have 1 less lane to worry about. Now you only have to watch for cars in 2 lanes. But it doesn't help the fact, just by reducing the lanes, that you're still gonna get a tremendous amount of volume along El Camino Real.
You get the same
And
number of
and those gaps are not gonna be there, and people are still gonna become impatient and take chances.
Although people may go slower, because if you've got 2 lanes, when I was campaigning, I asked lots of people about this, and many people said, well, yeah, I'd rather it be safe, but please don't reduce El Camino to 2 lanes. It's the only place I can drive fast on El Camino. So, I mean, people definitely drive faster in Atherton on El Camino.
Can I ask a question of staff, and if we do know the answer, that'd be great. If speed was a factor in the broadsides, do we have and maybe I should be directing a little bit more towards the chief, do we have any idea on those left turns, if speed was a factor, and the fact that we do have 3 lanes, that people start picking up speed and hitting people?
Mayor, I don't have that information. I prefer not to comment on it without having a,
Okay.
a researched opinion of it.
Okay. Any other questions from council? No. So we'll close our questions and open it up to the public for questions. Thank you. Please approach.
Hi, I'm Ted Allman, and a longtime resident of Selby Lane, about 45 years. And it's turned from a very quiet street to basically a thoroughfare. And the reasons for that are largely the left turn traffic, because people want to avoid going to Woodside and going left, going west on Woodside. This is a nice shortcut. If we can't somehow divert that traffic to where it belongs, we will continue to have a very large flow of traffic going along Selby Lane. Now the problem is not just speed on El Camino, but it's speed on Selby Lane. And we have Selby Lane School, we have kids walking there every day, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous for me to go out of my own driveway because there's so much traffic in the morning. The accidents, as has already been pointed out, are from people turning left. Turning left across 2 lanes with slow-moving traffic, or 3 lanes with faster-moving traffic, we're still going to have accidents. And we're still going to have accidents if we have a large number of cars on Selby Lane driving too fast. Now, I think there is a reasonable solution to this. I do think we need a traffic light. I don't see any way to avoid these accidents. But I think that if we have a traffic light, that would encourage even more traffic. And then we will just move our accidents a little bit further west. We need to slow down traffic. And the way to do that, there may be several ways. Put in a traffic circle, put in speed bumps, something to slow traffic down, which will discourage the commuters so that they go where they really are supposed to go. And if we slow them down, I think we will, by that itself, in itself, is going to reduce the number of people turning left and reduce traffic accidents. So I really feel the solution is traffic light, okay, but maybe not necessary if we could slow down the traffic on Selby. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please step up.
I don't really have a background to speak, but I live off of Selby Lane on Oakwood. Selby Lane and El Camino needs a traffic light. That there's absolutely, you must do this, the safety issue. And I believe there have been deaths, pedestrian deaths, in addition to the car accidents. In the 20 years I've lived there, haven't 3 people been killed at that intersection. So the traffic light. The other thing I wanted to point out is going down, reducing the lanes on El Camino. Selby Lane is the transition street between Redwood City, and people do speed horribly on El Camino. It's really trying to get out and make a left turn. I can't believe people even try to do that, but they do. And if you reduce the lanes in Atherton, I don't think that's going to change that problem at all. It does, as the woman pointed out, it does just create more confusion at that intersection. And I know times have changed dramatically, even in the 20 years I've been there. But we really need to deal with the safety issue. So.
Thank you. Next, please. Step up. Thank you.
My name is name's Claire Starr, I live on Selby Lane. About 20 years ago, I stood before the city council, town council, and voiced my objections to the traffic light, which was then being proposed by Caltrans. And just about everybody on Selby Lane agreed with me, we don't want a traffic light. Right now, as we've been told, traffic is increasing every day. We can barely get out of our houses. Sometimes you have to wait minutes, 5 minutes to get out of your house because of all the traffic. It speeds down, it injures my pets. I remember somebody 20 years ago saying he was fortunate that his children on Selby Lane were only injured, not killed. There's got to be something to cut back on the traffic. You've talked, I listened to hear about Sacred Heart School and demand management. You've never once asked Selby Lane to do a demand management stuff. You've never once asked Selby Lane to do an EIR when it grew from about 200 or 250 students to 1,000. So I honestly think maybe you people should think about the residents of Selby Lane and the traffic problems we have, and do an analysis. What's going to happen to our traffic if you put in a stoplight, in a traffic light? Are you going to actually increase the number of cars? Is that fair to us? Are you creating accidents on Selby Lane? My solution is much simpler and much cheaper. Ban left-hand turn lanes onto and off of Selby Lane from El Camino during commute hours or wherever it is. If you did that, you wouldn't have the accidents, you wouldn't have the traffic on Selby Lane. You would ask people to use Woodside Road and El Camino like they should to get from point A to point B. And I honestly think it would work a whole lot better because people would be forced to move where they're supposed to move. So anyway, I really ask you to say no to a traffic light on Selby Lane. I realize it's a safety issue, but you also have to realize I've had pets killed. I've almost been hit trying to put my recycling out in the afternoons. I mean, I literally, when I put my recycling out, have to wait for a gap in the traffic so I can get through there because there's so many cars and they're driving so close to the end. And the kids, when they walk down, walk way over, not where they're supposed to walk because they're so afraid of the cars. So please, please vote no, and please try to do something to stop the traffic growth on Selby Lane.
Thank you. Mark? Thank you, Zach.
I'm Zach Whitman of 26 Selby Lane, and I remember